series. And we're actually getting close to the end. Today's episode is going to be on measuring and marking. That will be followed by work holding, i.e. clamps, hold fast, things of that nature. Followed by miscellaneous tools, sharpening, and then a conclusion. So we are getting near the end. So if you stuck with me this far, please know that you don't have to put up with this nonsense for much longer. Okay, as I said, measuring and marking. There are some that would say that this should have been the first in the series because this is the most important. Because how do you know what to dimension a board to, or how to lay out a mortise and tenon, or a dovetail, or anything of that nature, without having tools to establish the parameters, which is valid. Although I've noticed lately there's been a counter argument to that, where there are some people in the minority, to be sure, who think that our reliance on measuring and marking tools, or at least measuring, is actually a hindrance. But that's for people to yell and scream and at each other on message boards. That's not my concern. So, first off, the Trisquare. This is kind of like the heart of the system, because this is what you'll use to lay out square cuts across the grain. You'll use it to see if your edges are square to your face, your ends are square to your sides, and it's basically a beam that's set at 90 degrees to a reference fence. The old ones were all wood. There are some that are all steel or all aluminum. This is pretty standard. It's a stainless steel beam and with a wooden reference fence. This one has brass on the side, because as we know, wood moves, it expands, contracts. So the brass acts like a constant reference point. Okay. Now, a lot of the tools are just variations on the Trisquare. And by the way, the tri comes from the Old English word, which just simply means to test out. Just like your triplane test out the flatness and squareness of the board, the Trisquare test that as well. Simpler square is this one right here. It has no reference fence, but it is bigger, so for checking the square of larger pieces this works. And because it has numbers going up and down the body and the tongue, you can use it for laying out various things like bird's mouths or things of that nature. The next type of square is the combination square. The combination square works by having a measuring beam. I got three. A 12-inch in standard American English, one in metric, and I have a 6-inch, which is good for setting up little things like the depth of a table saw cut, depth of a router cut, checking the depth of a mortise and tenon or a groove. And basically, it has a locking nut that you loosen, and you can move the beam back and forth in relation to its reference fence to whatever depth you want, lock it, and then you can take your pencil or scribe and move it and create a consistent line. Now on the off theme too is the marking gauge. The marking gauge is an extremely old tool. This one is a modern plastic version with a brass inlaid fence, but basically has a locking knob. The oldest ones actually have a wedge, but all of them now have a thumb screw. You loosen it, you move it to wherever you want it. You know, it has measurements on top, or if you're sending it to a board depth, you can just unlock it, set it to your board depth, lock it back up, and then use that, and you can scribe a line that way. Another one is the sliding TBevel. This is in a shop. Is basically used for setting up dovetails. You lock in the slope you want. There's a little wing nut here that you can unloosen, move it to wherever you want, whatever slope you want, lock it back up, and then lay out your dovetails. Here there's no brass, but since you're doing it on an angle, having a dead square reference point isn't as critical. Now, this is a protractor. You probably remember them from school. For finding exact angles or setting up exact angles, this is what you would use. It has your graduations of the circle here. It has a notch here. You line it to whatever degree you want, and then you just mark it out. I don't use this tool too often because I usually don't need that level of accuracy, but it's there. This is called a carpenter square, also called a framing square because it's used in house framing. For large panels, this is really good. If you remember my toy box series, I use this to check the square of my panels for that. There's different types. The nicest and fanciest ones have all kind of formula on the body for rafters and things like that. I got the simplest one because basically I'm just using this to check square. So I didn't need I didn't need anything that fancy. This is a folding rule. This is a 6-foot folding rule. I don't use it that much. For checking inside dimensions of boxes and things of that nature, I prefer this to a tape measure, and that's pretty much what I use it for. Also, if I have to do a quick reference of a board thickness, something like that, I use this tool right here. But once again, not one of my mainstays, but nice to have. This is the heart of. This is another heart. This with your Trisquare are like the two most important things. This is a tape measure. It's a thin ribbon of steel that has graduations marked on it. This one is an 8-meter tape measure that I got from England. I ordered it from England. I didn't go to England. I'd like to, but not yet. For myself, I prefer to build in metric. I also have a 16-foot tape measure. But this is what you'll do most of your measuring with. This is a good tape measure is a must-have. This here is a chalk line. I don't use it that often in the shop. Occasionally I do. Basically, it's a line that you pour ground up chalk into, then you pull it out like this, draw it tight, pull the string, and it transfers the chalk to the board. I used it a lot more for laying out diagonal lines before I got this. This is a 3 a 3-foot or what's commonly known as a yardstick. It's aluminum. So now, whenever I need to lay out long diagonal, I just use this. But before I bought this, I used the chalk line. And this is good for laying out long lines as well. Um, just mark out your 2 points, lay it on the board, and then mark along it. And that's pretty much what that's for. For circles, you got your everyday simple compass. You set your radius, put this in the center, and you can draw a circle. For larger circles, you have this right here. It has a movable point that goes on this shaft here. You just set it up, and you can draw larger circles. And the good thing about this is, if you need to make even larger circles, you just take this off by a piece of dowel the same diameter, and you can literally go as large as you want. Also, for drawing curves, and they're called French curves. There's a set of them with all different types of radiuses and sweeps that you can use to lay on your work and for embellishments, like on bracket feet or transitions. Here's another type of square. This basically has a movable arm built into it, and here's the gradations for angles and stuff. You just move it to where you want it, lock it, and this is good for marking out larger pieces than what you could with a sliding T-bevel or a protractor. Okay, that really, almost forgot the 2 most important. You can have all the measuring and marking tools you want, but without a way to actually scribe a line, they're useless. And the 2 most